All right, perfect. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Business in COVID. A note for attendees that the communication platform to be used to communicate important information throughout the World Affairs Conference today is the WAC page on Instagram at World Affairs Con. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer's speaker system by default and are muted. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions in the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view the recording. I would now like to introduce Mr. Bharat Masrani. Mr. Masrani was appointed Group President and Chief Executive Officer of TD Bank Group on November 1st, 2014. Mr. Masrani has more than 30 years of extensive banking experience and is a member of the TD Bank Group Board of Directors. Thank you so much for being here and speaking with us today.
I'm thrilled to be here, Dima, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm thrilled to be here. It's a great opportunity to talk to students and the future leaders. So looking forward to a great discussion, Dima.
Awesome, thank you so much. So since we don't have too much time, we can get right into it. So Mr. Masrani, I'd like to get your views as a business leader on the impact of the pandemic in a global context. So what's your perspective on how COVID has impacted the business sector and our broader society as a whole?
Well, Dima, what can I say? This is one for the ages. This crisis, is unprecedented. I don't think there's anybody living who would say that, hey, yeah, we've seen this before. So it is one for the ages. But I think we should keep in mind that all crises have one thing in common. And this one also has that characteristic that it will end. All crises end in the end. So looking forward to that day when this is behind us. But from a global perspective, apart from business, I'd say huge implications for geopolitical situation in the world. We already seeing countries jockeying, China trying to, give vaccines to certain countries, Americans doing the same thing, Russians doing the same thing. So I think there's going to be a changing world order to some extent over the next little while, because all the countries in the world are suffering here. So I think there is geopolitical implications we should keep in mind from a global perspective. And then, of course, there's the economic impact, which has been pretty profound. Like when an economy is shut down by law, it causes, great difficulty for citizens around the world. And we've seen that play out in different ways. So, there is a recession. That's, for sure, when you shut down an economy, that's what happens. But I would also say that the level of support, at least in the Western countries and some of the other developing nations, has been unprecedented by government. So hopefully the economy is able to, repair itself because the level of support is unprecedented as well. But without a doubt, I think, businesses have to play a very important role. At TD, just to talk about my own bank, we know what role we have to play as the economy repairs itself. We are a global company. We are very large in North America, but we have a global operation. And so we have to play our part, but I think it's going to be, some time before the world can come out of this. And we should not underestimate the economic impact, the business impact, as well as the geopolitical impact. So I'm hoping we get to some sense of normalcy soon, but it's something to watch for over the next little while.
Yeah, thank you so much. I totally agree. It's definitely difficult time right now, but it's important to remember that we will return to normal.
We will, for sure we will. And it may take time. And let's not forget, there's a lot of other things that are, I don't want to say it's a silver lining, because there's nothing silver about this crisis. It's very tragic. People have died, families have lost their loved ones. So it's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible crisis. But there's a lot of things that have come out of it, technology and how people are interacting with each other, and the new business models are emerging. So hopefully we can get into a discussion of that sort as well.
Yeah, for sure. So Mr. Masrani, you've been leading TD through this public health crisis for close to a year now, which is hard to believe. But can you share with us how TD, as a financial institution with a footprint in both Canada and the US, has responded to the pandemic, and what are some of your takeaways?
Well, the footprint actually, just to correct you, there is global. It's not just U.S. and Canada. We have offices, in major financial centers in the world as well. But you're right. In North America is where our major operations are. We have about 2,500 locations, retail locations, and obviously major businesses in investment banking, commercial banking, wealth management. So we are what you call a universal financial services company. So I'd say, the first day this, we started preparing for this in January in the bank. Because we have units elsewhere in Asia, they started to feel the effect of the virus a lot earlier than we did in North America. So that was a good lesson for us to see, what we should be doing. I think we set up a set of guiding principles as to, how we're going to manage through this crisis. And the guiding principle that was most paramount for us was the health and safety of our own people and our customers while operating the bank in a safe manner. So that was our guiding principle one. We organized around it. We had an executive commander that we appointed within the bank, and I'm very fortunate. I have a terrific team. So each one knew what to do as to how we're going to, react to the crisis. So it has turned out, I think as a bank, we managed quite well. Instantly, we were able to transfer 60,000 of our people out of 90,000 globally that work at TD to work from home. And prior to the crisis, maybe we might have 10 or 12,000 do that. So that was quite an achievement. And then just to give you a perspective, in our business, we are a big trading bank. So, in the international financial capital markets, we play somewhat of an important role. So our traders were also working from home. Our call centers were working from home. So which was a major achievement. A lot of other institutions were suffering, whilst that was going on. And then, of course, we played an important role in making sure that we are there for our customers. So all the digitization that you see, we had millions of our customers, start interacting with us on the mobile phone because they could not go out. But at the same time, we had to keep our locations open because financial services is an essential service. So I think, what we were able to do for our customers, stand by our customers, provide credit. We are a bank, so we have to provide credit to the economy. Otherwise, you get into a major depression. And again, I feel very proud as a bank we were able to do that. And of course, we were there to support our customers, through mortgage deferrals. And I don't want to get into too technical part of it, but we were there to help out our customers. And then finally, for the communities, we know at TD, we are a purpose-driven company, that our communities are very important to us. We are only as good as the communities in which we live and work. So as a bank, we played an important role as to how to help those communities, not only just with money, but, what other things can we do? Can we provide, other services? Can we provide volunteers, to make sure that these communities are able to sustain themselves? So a lot of, things that we managed through the crisis. And I say this 100 times, I could not be more proud of 90,000 bankers, TD bankers around the world, as to what they did for our customers, what they did for each other, and for the communities in which we live and work. So very proud of how our bank has managed through this pandemic. And frankly, I should say, generally businesses. That's why, in North America, you see the economy generally, having managed, relatively well. And that's because, all the businesses were able to, adapt to this new reality.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing how all the businesses were able to adapt and change their operations so quickly and effectively during this pandemic. And just going back to what you said, definitely COVID is a terrible crisis, but like many other crises, it creates an opportunity for organizations to do more and create a better future for everyone. So can you tell us how TD views its role in society?
So it's a great question, Dima, and we take it very seriously. In our case, part of our strategy, a core part of our strategy is that we are a purpose-driven organization. Yes, we are a for-profit company, so financial performance is very important. Our owners demand that. But in addition to that, we work very hard to enrich the lives of our customers, our colleagues, and our communities. And so, it's critically important for us that, we play a role. And what comes to mind when we say we are purpose driven is what's important. What's important, for our customers, for all our stakeholders, including our investors. And I'd say the ESG topic has become, very, very fashionable to talk about, the environment and social responsibilities and governance, from major businesses. And at TD, we've been working on that for many, many years, but have, actually put more energy into it because, the importance that it has given what has happened because of the pandemic. So very quickly on the E side, on the environment side, TD has a tradition of being very, very environmentally sensitive bank. In fact, 30 years ago, we set up something called the TD Friends of the Environment Foundation, long before people were talking about the environment. We were one of the first banks to go carbon neutral with our own operations in 2010, and have made huge commitments, on supporting a low carbon economy, working through a transition to a low carbon world. We made commitments to provide $100 billion, that's with a B, dollars in financing over the next 7 or 8 years, to make sure that we are playing our part. And recently also announced a net zero target. I think we are one of very few global institutions that have done that. Feel very proud that we now, not only regarding our own operations, but where we provide financing, we'll make sure that our borrowers and companies that deal with us, counterparties as we call them, will also work towards a net zero world, because that's the way we want to make sure our financing is used. So feel very proud that as a bank, we've done that, and we get recognized. We are, I think, 7 years in a row on the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index. So feel good that our bank is well positioned. Just very quickly on the social side, there are so many topics I can talk about, as to what we are doing. But one that comes to mind is inclusion and diversity. This is core to what we are. We think it's the core part of our culture, and frankly, our secret sauce is a competitive advantage. And we've been working at this for many, many years, and have made great progress. But again, given what we've seen in the world, with racism and what's going on, we want to make sure that we are doing more, and where we can provide, more value and more support, we want to do that. So feel very good that, we are on a good footing there. But there's lots to do, not only at TD, but all companies, all societies, because, we cannot live in a polarized world where there's systemic racism. That is just an unacceptable situation to be in. And I like TD's position that we are wanting to be part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. And I feel proud that as a bank, we are doing that. And of course, governance matters. It's one thing for me to say, to all your audience today that, hey, TD is doing all this. Well, we put out metrics. We put real tangible metrics out there as to, are we making progress or not? And many of these metrics are publicly disclosed every year. So I think, as a institution, as a major company, a global company, I feel good that we are playing our part to make sure that, we are doing more than just providing financial performance, for our stakeholders.
Yeah, those are some huge issues, and it's great to hear that a bank as large and influential as TD is doing so much to help move forward with improving society as a general. And I think before we move on to questions from the audience, I feel like this is something that has to be asked. And I was wondering, do you have any advice for our participants today as we think about our futures after high school?
Well, you know what, you folks, you are the future of the world. You're the future of our societies. And, I feel so great that, when I'm talking to you and I read about this organization, that has put up this program. I mean, I don't want to say kids because you're young adults, you are the hope, we have for the world. And I'd say, my advice to you is, the world is changing so fast because of technology, because of the pandemic, because of so many factors happening, that the environment is really changing very fast. And so my advice to you would be adapt to that environment quickly. Don't hope, wish, and pray that the good old days are going to come back, because generally they don't. So, being adaptable, being nimble, making sure that you are looking for what matters to you, your passion, and important as you look forward make sure that you're passionate about what you want to do, because this is the only life we know, and you have to make sure that you're going to be excited with that. And a couple of personal things that I've learned over the years: it's always good to be a good listener. Many times, people want to get, and it might be challenging because you're trying to establish a personal brand and all that. But I always find that I learn, and I know I'm going to learn a lot today, based on my conversation with you. It's always learning, and one way to learn is to be a very good listener. And finally, I'd say, humility matters as well. Enjoy your life. There's lots to do. Everybody wants to get ahead, but the work-life balance is also important. So some of the thoughts is my advice, but you are the future for our society, and I wish all of you the very best as you embark on a great career in the future.
Thank you so much. That's super valuable. I know I'll definitely be taking that into account. So thank you so much, Mr. Masrani. We're now going to begin answering questions submitted by attendees. And as a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions panel in your attendee control panel. So Mr. Masrani, our first audience question is, and this is a big one: do you think with the rise of online banking combined with COVID-19, you will see the disappearance of physical banks?
The short answer is no. Our own experience, again, I don't want to get too technical. At TD, we believed in what we call an omni experience. So, we try and create what we call personalized, connected, legendary experiences for our customers. And one way to describe it is that we want to be available to our customers, whether they deal with us through a mobile phone, online, or through one of our physical locations, or through an ATM. And we want to provide that seamless experience that is legendary, that TD is well known for. And I'd say, over the past 20, 30, 40 years, whenever a new technology comes forward or whenever there's a change in environment, people always ask the same questions. Are bank branches or bank stores, are they going to disappear? And every time it turns out to be no, because, people, our customers, want to deal with us in person for certain types of transactions. And through this pandemic, our physical locations have been open for the most part. We've had to adjust hours. Some stores have to be closed now because of the health crisis. But for largely, we've remained open, and we've found our locations to be very busy. People are making appointments. They want to come in because they want to get advice. They want to feel confident about their financial future. So my view is that, our physical locations are here to stay. But because of what has happened as a result of digitization, what we do in those physical locations will change. What TD branches or stores will look like in the future might be different. The type of services we provide might be different. But for sure, our customers want the personal connections. They want to walk into our locations for advice with certain types of banking products. It's a long answer to a very simple question, but my view is, at least at TD, I see many years of physical locations being, very important to our overall strategy and how we connect with our customers.
I see. Thank you. Another question is, what does the future of the stock market and globalization in terms of these main guiding businesses look like post-COVID in the long term?
So firstly, on globalization, because of the crisis, and there's a lot of mistrust on where the virus might be spreading or not. There is a bit of a backlash against trade. There are some trade barriers that have been put in place. So I think globalization is somewhat under attack. It's a model that has really been terrific for the world. It has helped the world, to improve standards and, to make goods in the most efficient place is good for humanity. And that's what globalization and trade did for the world. But now we see, because of, polarization, because of, the pandemic, that's under attack. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I don't think it's going to stop completely, but it may slow down a bit. So we should keep that in mind. From a stock market perspective, it's important for businesses to be able to access capital. They need to access capital. It's an important component of building a business, growing a business, and a thriving business. So markets, capital markets generally play an important role. And in some countries, capital markets are more mature than others. But I don't want to say a fan of stock market or anything, but I think capital markets play a very critical role for a thriving, business sector, which is important for a thriving economy. So, in some countries, these things work better than others, but generally, I see that as a positive factor for businesses to grow, to have availability to capital, and the capital markets provide that in the most efficient way.
I see. Thank you. Another audience question is, do you believe the lockdown had an overall positive or negative impact with regards to civil liberties and economic fallout?
Wow, that's a great question and a very loaded question. I think lockdowns do play a role. They are required. I think health and safety of people, of any population, has to be priority one. I mean, we cannot afford, at the end of it and say, well, let's get herd immunity and have millions and millions of people die in trying to get there. So I think, I at the outset of this pandemic, locking down to control the virus, to have the standards put in place, like wearing a mask and social distancing and other health requirements, were absolutely necessary. Now, I know there's a lot of debate about civil liberties, but when there's a health crisis, you got to look at what is good for all of society and not just for an individual. So I know in certain countries there's a huge debate about whether forcing people to wear a mask is going against somebody's civil liberty. Well, if you're going to live in a society where there needs to be certain norms, we have laws, we have requirements, that you have to follow. I put, the health and safety of populations into that category. So I think, lockdowns and the health standards that were introduced were appropriate. But at some point, we need to figure a way out of that world. And, I think where we are today with the vaccines getting rolled out, yes, there's a lot of bumps in the road. Hopefully, these lockdowns become more of an academic argument rather than a real argument in the way we are living today.
Thank you. Maybe one final question, just to end on a positive note, is I know you have already mentioned a few examples. However, could you please expand and give more examples of good things that have emerged due to the pandemic?
Listen, when I think about my own family, I've been sitting in Toronto for the past 10 months. I have not traveled, but because of technology, I connect with family a lot more than I ever did, because I was too busy traveling and I was in the office and meeting my clients and customers. So I think in a way, in a perverse way, don't want to say this is how we should have planned it. People have become closer. The values, people are now realizing what's important, rather than just, getting into a rat race and say, I got to do this, and, life kind of passes by. People have been able to, sit back. And, I should be careful, because in certain countries, people have not had that luxury. But, it has allowed the world to probably find ways to connect more in a virtual way. Secondly, I'd say that the technologies we've seen come forward have been, game changing. That we could not, Dima, you would have not thought of doing a conference like this if it wasn't for the pandemic. And all of a sudden, everyone has become an expert on how to, navigate on this platform. There are so many platforms available. And then finally, look at science. So how quickly has this vaccine come forward? And when you are in a crisis like we were in, the world comes together, companies come together. You're seeing in the pharmaceutical industry and in banking, I can talk about my own bank, as to how we cooperated with other major banks, our competitors, to make sure that we support the economy, make sure we're providing credit, make sure that we are there for our customers. All that would have not happened if it wasn't for the pandemic. So, yes, there are lots of, bad things. It's been tragic. I know there are students participating from certain countries where this has been absolutely a disaster. So I know how difficult it has been, but hopefully as we come out of it, we take something good out of it and say, let's make sure that we apply it for the betterment of humankind.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know I, for one, have also been more connected than ever with friends, family, everyone. So that's definitely a huge benefit that has come out of this. So yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Masrani. And thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Business in COVID. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You'll also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. Please navigate to your links hub on worldaffairs.ucc.on.ca to attend the following events. Immediately following this plenary at 11:15 a.m. Eastern Time, the programs team is holding a startup exhibition during lunch on Zoom. This is a drop-in style chat in breakout rooms where you have the opportunity to ask professional and student startups questions about their entrepreneurial journey. Please refer to your personal schedule on the WAC website for the list of startups and their corresponding Zoom links. At 11:50 a.m. Eastern Time, the WAC 2021 keynote address delivered by renowned poet and professor Dr. George Elliott Clark will take place on GoToWebinar. Please refer to your personal schedule on WAC website for the webinar link. On behalf of the World Affairs Conference and our presenters, thank you so much for joining us and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Dima.
Thank you so much.